Hello everybody, this is Gregory with 5-Minute Catholic Apologetics and Living, where 5 minutes of your time may get you to the divine. Today we're going to talk about and exhort Protestants to retro-engineer why Protestants eventually became Catholic. Now before we begin, let's start with a prayer. Nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritui Sancti, Amen. Gloria Patri et Filio et Spiritui Sancto, sic ut erat in principio et nunc et semper, et in saecula saeculorum. Amen. So what do I mean by that? You probably have heard of Area 51. There's this idea that we found spaceships, and because of the crashed spaceship, we were able to go through it and maybe design our own spaceship. Or a simpler example would be getting a watch and opening it and see how it works. So retro-engineering. So when I exhort Protestants or recommend to Protestants to retro-engineer why certain Protestants became Catholic, what I'm saying is, if you're open-minded, and that's a big thing because a lot of people are just steeped in Catholic prejudice, and a lot of it comes from their pastor or just in their family, that there's a lot of things that they believe the Catholic Church teaches that we don't teach at all. And Fulton Sheen has that great saying, there's 10 people in America that hate the Catholic Church for what it represents, but there's millions that hate it for what they think it teaches. And so you'll find a lot of Protestants who believe we worship Mary, we worship statues. There's all this nonsense that you can find in the Catechism that clearly we do not do, and we've never taught. But the prejudice is hard. And we've talked about it here before, like you see the prejudice that Protestants have toward Catholicism, but you really don't see that going the other way around. Most Catholics, it's almost like they're just indifferent, or maybe there's just so many Protestant denominations that they can't keep track of the theology, especially, mainline Protestant churches like Lutheranism, Episcopalianism, there is a theology, but the megachurch, it is all ad hoc theology. There's no systematic theology over there. But the Catholics there's really not as much of a prejudice. But for those who are open-minded, Protestants, retro-engineer why Protestants become Catholic. A good example of this would be on EWTN. There's a great show that's been on for years called Coming Home. Coming Home is a show that was originally hosted by Marcus Grodi. Now it's hosted by, I believe, John Mark, his son. And what it is, and I think there's probably hundreds because they've been doing this for years, they interview a Protestant who's become Catholic. And the Protestants are every denomination, including non-Christian denominations like Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons, and just every spectrum. And even they interviewed lapsed Catholics. And they'll talk about their story. The show's about an hour long. They'll talk about like what was the road that these Protestants took to become Catholic. And it's fascinating. And I would recommend to all Protestants who are open to the fact that the Catholic Church was the church founded by Jesus Christ. It was not founded by man. It was founded by Jesus Christ on the shoulders of Peter, Matthew 16. And if you're open-minded about it, I would recommend you watch a show like this, or talk to former Protestants who become Catholic and ask them, like, what led you to the church? Now, when you talk to them, they might tell you things that you might not understand or you might not agree with, but at least you're open-minded to hearing it. And this is why I talk about retro-engineer. Retro-engineer is find out why these people became Catholic. Cardinal Newman, famous Anglican prelate, 19th century, he eventually became Catholic. And he has a saying, those who know history cease to be Protestant. And so for him, and for a lot of people, it's delving into the church fathers. Because I don't want to generalize all Protestants, especially the megachurch evangelical Protestants, but the majority of them don't know a lot of church history. Their church history kind of goes from early Christian church, and then we jump, maybe 1,500 years to Luther, and then maybe 500 years to their pastor's books, whether it be Joel Osteen or Purpose-Driven Life, whatever it is. And that's it, and because in the Protestant world, it's a very different paradigm. It's really the Bible and you, in your relationship with Jesus Christ. So this idea that it's kind of important to know the church fathers, the patristic fathers, the apostles of the original apostles, is not really stressed in the majority of the evangelical Protestant world. But those who are curious, and G.K. Chesterton has that great saying. He was a Catholic convert that you're either gravitating toward truth, which is the Catholic Church, or you're gravitating toward atheism. But there are going to be Protestants who question things. Like, did the early church have smoke machines and pop music? Clearly they didn't. But like, was this the way the church always was, the early church? And so they're going to do some investigating. And the more investigating that you do, you tend to eventually, maybe you'll go the road of Anglicanism first, maybe you'll go the road to Orthodoxy first, but eventually the truth will lead you to the Catholic Church. It really will. But it takes intellectual curiosity to do that, and it takes an open-mindedness to do that. And I'm not saying that every Protestant who reads the Church Fathers will become Catholic. What I'm saying is maybe ask converts why they became Catholic. And maybe you'll get something that's genuine. You might not agree, but it's genuine. And look, a lot of Protestants will know former Catholics. They say the second largest denomination. Remember, the Catholic Church is not a denomination. It is the church founded by Jesus Christ. Even the word denomination means from the name. From the name, which name? The Catholic Church, right? From the name. Protestants are protesting from who? The Catholic Church. But you'll find Protestants who know lapsed Catholics, former Catholics, at their megachurch. And so they'll be like, oh, see, these were Catholics and they left, and kind of reinforces your own prejudice toward the church. But remember, the large majority of people who identify as Catholics, and we talked about recently with the episode about being sacramentalized but not catechized or evangelized, is these were nominal Catholics. Like, people who really know the faith and know what the faith teaches normally don't leave the Catholic Church. And if they do leave, it's going to be because of some of the shenanigans that are going on in Rome that they don't understand, that you don't judge an entire institution by some weeds. They might go Orthodox. But as a whole, people who know the truth of the Catholic Church don't leave the Catholic Church. The people who leave the Catholic Church are those that were, God bless them, not really well catechized. Maybe they were sacramentalized as a kid. And then they have some bad pastoral experience. The priest told them something in confession, or they wanted to cremate Mima and keep the ashes at home, and the priest said no. Or it could be maybe they got divorced and they wanted to remarry, and the Catholic Church says no, you have to get an annulment first, because Christ says you can only, if you remarry, it is fornication. It could be something pastoral like that. So the majority of former Catholics that you would meet at a Protestant church, Protestants, are not really well steeped in the knowledge of the Catholic faith. They really aren't. So if you really want to know what the Catholic Church teaches, we live in a time and era where it's not hard to find this out. You have Catholic.com, you have Catholic Answers, you have EWTN, you have even large apostolates and very small apostolates like mine, where the information's out there. The Catechism of the Catholic Church is essentially the handbook that shows everything we teach. It's all there. So any question you have, if again you are open to the truth, your heart isn't hardened, this stuff is there. This stuff is there. And once you start going down that road of learning the truth that we don't worship Mary, that we believe that Jesus is truly present in the Eucharist, as we see in John 6, it's a door that's open, and a lot of Protestants can't close it until they ultimately enter the Catholic Church. So my closing tips to you is read the Catechism, talk to Catholics in your life who actually know about the faith. Check out the Coming Home Network. You can find it on podcasts. It's great. Again, it's Protestants who eventually became Catholic. And that's my suggestion to you, to kind of retro-engineer and talk to Protestants who became Catholics. Guys, post in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Were you a Protestant who became a Catholic? Do you know people who are like this? I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, take care. God bless.